Hey, this is Dan Jeannotte, and you're listening to the FSF PopCast.
The show that convinced the producers of the Book of Boba Fett that all the speeder chase scenes should be slowed down and that the audience would really appreciate them way more that way.
Our show is brought to you by our charity sponsor, the Red Shirt Widows and Orphans Fund, which supports the Wish Upon a Teen Foundation that helps out sick kids when they need it most. And just imagine the comfort you'll give Red Shirt crewman number 187. He'll know that when he puts on the red shirt and joins the crew of the Enterprise in their struggle against a Gorn infestation, that he didn't leave his family destitute and without hope, because the Red Shirt Widows and Orphans Fund has his back, and what's left of his mustache.
Well, hey, our guest today is an amazing actor whose work you've seen in shows like The Bold Type, Good Witch, Rain. You've heard his voice on games like Assassin's Creed Unity as Arno Dorian and some other games as well. But we are sure that you may very well know him best for his work on Star Trek Strange New Worlds. That's where I got to know him and was excited. I was like, oh my God, we're going to talk with Dan. As George Samuel Kirk, or Sam Kirk, as he's known on the show, the brother of, that other Kirk guy, the not as cool one. But anyway, we are so proud to welcome Dan Jeannotte to the FSF PopCast. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely.
We hope that continues.
We're at the, we have to decide, are we on the climb of the roller coaster, or are we on the way down where everybody's like, well, I'm glad that's over with. So we'll see.
You never know with us.
You never know.
I feel like we're still climbing. We haven't
Oh,
peaked.
that's good.
Maybe we could try to underline the point where we do peak, and then
we'll put a pin in that spot and go, okay, that's what we don't want to repeat. There we go.
We do always have this tendency too, though, that we start going up and climbing the peak, and then somehow we just lose the rails and away we go.
Sounds fun to you.
Yeah, that's what happens when you get a couple people with ADHD and you give them microphones. It just happens. So, all right, Dan, one of the things we love to do is talk with our guests. It's kind of become a staple of the show. We like to talk with our guests about their backgrounds, how they got started, how they became the person that they are sitting across the virtual table from us. So in the story of Dan Jeannotte, what influenced you at an early age to get you started in the entertainment business, and what keeps you going now? How'd you get from there to here?
Great question. You want to hear my origin story?
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I think I can kind of trace it back if we go way back. I've always been interested in stories. I've always been a big reader from a pretty young age. And I think I don't know, maybe I was a little bit precocious. I was writing stories from a young age too, dictating them to my mom at first, and then writing my own. And I grew up kind of immersed in books. Books were really my thing. And I thought once I got past the kid career ambitions of being, an astronaut or being a fire truck or whatever, I thought to myself, if there was a job that I was going to have, maybe I'd be an author. And then I kind of carried that with me for a while. But then as a teenager, I got really into film. I hadn't done any acting or anything, but I got really into film. And my sort of thought process of how could I be a storyteller, it kind of shifted to maybe I could make movies. And then when I was in college, I made a great friend. My story really is a story about Matt Goldberg, and we were studying the same thing, which was liberal arts, religion and philosophy and history and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he told me he was putting together an improv troupe at our college, and he thought that I should try out for it. And around the same time, he was also doing a play with the theater department at our college. I didn't even know there was a theater department at the college. And so he invited me to do these two things, try out for his improv troupe and to come and see him in this show. I can't really remember which one came first now, but they've melded together in my mind. Basically, I went to see him in this play, a musical called Pippin, and it was all kids my age doing this show that had like a pretty good production value, you know, for a college. And it blew my mind that kids my age were up there singing and telling this weird, absurd meta story. It's about like actors putting on a show, but they're being run out of town, and the show is about like Charlemagne and the Holy Roman Empire or something. It's kind of, I don't even really remember it all. What I do remember is this: my friend Matt Goldberg, he had a bit where there was like, it's a silly show. There's like a pile of bodies on stage after some huge battle, and the main character goes over to the pile of bodies and like lifts up a severed head, and the severed head was Matt Goldberg, and he spoke. He like says a joke, and then the guy like puts him down. You know, it was like stage magic or whatever. But I'm like, that's amazing. He's on stage getting laughs as a severed head. I want to do that. I want to do that. And so I also auditioned for his improv troupe. I got in. The first time I performed improv in front of an audience, the first time I performed improv really at all, there's like 200 people at this improv competition. And I went out on stage, the same stage he had been on in Pippin. And I just remember saying something, making something up, getting a big reaction. And I was just hooked, you know, the idea that something could come out of my mind through my being and connect with people and get a laugh and get you know, yeah, just connect with people. It felt thrilling. And so those two things together made me switch the program I was in. I switched into creative arts. I started doing theater, and it kind of all, you know, snowballed from there, and started doing improv. And my friend Matt and I, he's still a dear friend of mine 20 years later. I was just talking to him on the phone earlier today. We've done sketch comedy and improv together for a very long time. And I think, you know, to the second part of your question, what keeps me going is, you know, you're always getting a chance. Well, hopefully, ideally, you're always getting a chance in this field to discover something new, to explore some new facet of yourself or of the world. Depending on the kind of stories you're telling, you get different emotions to work with, different scenarios, different kind of social issues. You should be able to kind of always be bringing something new to it and getting something new out of it. It's not a static job, you know, it's changing, and it's yeah, and it's exciting. I feel very, very lucky that I kind of stumbled into some amount of you know, consistency or success in my life. And yes, very lucky.
I think it's interesting the number of people that we've talked to who have, when sharing their origin story, have something very similar to what you talk about. You know, that first reaction that it just kind of hits them, and then it's, you know, some have likened it to almost like an endorphin high, just, and like in you want more, and then you have to kind of keep chasing it. And somebody I don't remember who it was, but one of our other guests said it was the best addiction they could have ever had. And you know, that they wanted to keep chasing that feeling because that was what, and then they found out they could make money doing it as well, and they're like, well, this is the perfect thing, I got to do this. So
performance highs are the best.
I know, it's so exciting. And I really, I think you could think of it as something a little bit egocentric. You're like, I'm being watched, I'm being listened to, people are laughing or responding to me. But also, I really do think of it as a kind of massive social and emotional connection. You're like getting that, you know, the buzz you might get from a good conversation in a way, but it's like multiplied by however many people are in the audience, you know. It's really something special. And yeah, and I started doing live stuff, theater and improv, and it was a long time until I made any kind of money off of it. For a while, it was just the thing I did because I loved doing it, and it was so fun, and because it was the only thing that I had found that I was good at. I didn't really have any other you know, marketable skills. I had no other path to take, which I think is probably a good thing in the end, because it is a difficult job. And if you do have a backup plan, you'll probably, you know, use that plan at some point.
Sure. Pull the escape cord. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is one of the things, though, that I love about live theater is the give and take with the audience being on either side of it. I mean, I was in school productions, I was in choir, I had dance recitals. There is that give and take both directions. And it is so thrilling and so much fun. And talking about live theater, this is actually kind of fun for me because in my research for the interview, I found out that you met your wife in a production of As You Like It.
Yeah.
Which, Tim, that's Shakespeare, in case you didn't know that because you don't, read books. Anyway. So was it one of those situations where you were cast as Orlando and she was Rosalind, making it like a relationship on multiple levels, or was it, how exactly did that happen? Because my parents met doing theater too, and I love that story.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, well, pretty much. We weren't Orlando and Rosalind. We were we were Oliver and Celia. So not the main characters, but we were two characters who do fall in love in the show. And it's one of those Shakespeare things where like we were only supporting characters, so we fall in love in the course of one scene where there's other things going on, like exposition happening, but we're meant kind of also, the audience is meant to believe based on that we just fell in love. And then that play ends with, I think, 4 different couples getting married. It's like a mass wedding at the end. So yeah, we met doing this show. We had kind of been aware of each other before because we both went to the same school, but we never met. We had friends in common, but we never actually kind of came face to face, which was, in retrospect, magical, I think, because it happened at the right time, I guess. And we did this show, and at the end of the play, we were getting married. And although we didn't get into a relationship at that time, the flame was lit, and eventually, years later, when we did get married, we actually asked the director of that play, who had cast us together, to be our officiant at our wedding.
Oh, that's cool.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so
very
cute.
cool.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it just felt right. We always called him our Cupid. Shout out to Joel Fishbane. Thanks, Cupid. And
that's cool.
It was lovely. He is a writer and director and performer himself, so we knew he'd be good at running the show at our wedding.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, I am a new resident of the Trekverse. So for years, I have done all that I could to stay away from anything Star Trek related. I had I may or may not have liked your fictional brother very much. And so I may have avoided some of.
I want to hear more about this, Tim. I want you to tell me you had some early experience watching like the original series, and you were sort of rubbed the wrong way.
I just never liked it was more, I didn't have a problem with Kirk per se. I never liked William Shatner. And so I was just like, why sit down and watch more of that when I don't like that guy? He's the main dude in the show. I'm going to see him every episode. There's not going to be an episode without him. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, anyway, there were some things in Star Trek, like absolutely loved The Wrath of Khan. Always have. I always thought that was such a cool movie. One of the greatest, evil bad guy revenge attempt movies, and I just love it. And but I never really got into Trek itself. So when like Next Generation came out, I didn't watch it. Enterprise, DS9, all that stuff, ignored it all. I was firmly
Voyager. Don't forget Voyager.
Yeah, I didn't want to watch Voyager or
never forget Voyager.
I was firmly in the Star Wars camp, and I was just like, yeah, Star Trek sucks. I'm not watching that. But for whatever reason, I sat down and I decided that I should just watch Strange New Worlds. And
good for you. See, change is possible.
Yeah, I watched the first episode of Strange New Worlds, and I was like, well, this ain't so bad. And so I watched the second one, and then I watched the third one, and I found myself really, really enjoying the story and getting involved with it. And so then I went back and I watched the rest of TOS, and now I'm in Next Generation. And
cool.
I can't say that I watched the rest of TOS. I got to a point in TOS where I was like, yeah, and I've had my fill of Shatner. We're going to move to Next Generation now. So,
but Shatner is so much fun.
Actually, you know what? I like him better in the movies than I do the TV series, because there's a difference in how he portrays Kirk in both of those. So
I prefer Boston Legal.
Yeah, I prefer him. I prefer him I prefer movie Kirk over TV show Kirk. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. But so my question out of all of that rambling is, were you a fan of Star Trek before getting the role of Sam Kirk? And if so, what was your entry point into the nerdiverse?
Yeah. I watched Next Generation. Next Generation was my jam. I think I would say I had a similar feeling to you when it came to the original series. There was something about Kirk slash Shatner. I can't really say. I can't separate them. You know, like
Mhm.
it
Right.
was definitely something about him was not my jam. But that was also because I first started watching Next Generation, where they, they very deliberately had a captain who was quite different than Kirk.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So Picard was my captain. And then I see the original series, and of course, I'm just a kid. And so I'm very much, I'm a kid of the 80s and I'm watching shows made in the 80s. And then I watch this thing made in the 60s, and I'm like, it looks weird. They're all talking weird. And this guy, compared to Picard, Kirk, is, well, he's just very different. I'm not going to speak ill of him, but he's very different.
Understood.
And Next Generation was my jam. I never would have called myself a Trekkie, to be fair, but I watched Next Generation pretty often at home, and then over the years watched a fair amount of Voyager and some Deep Space Nine. But Next Generation, I think, definitely in retrospect was kind of formative for me, because it was a show that showed me as a kid you could have stuff that was both fun and that was both entertaining and thoughtful. I guess good way to put it. And in now, like, that's exactly the kind of thing I want to do. I want to do stuff that is entertaining, but that also provokes thought, that is thought out, that has, whether it's subtle or overt, has a kind of idea that's being put forward.
Yeah.
And that's what speculative fiction does. It can give us all these wonderful ideas, interesting ideas wrapped up in spectacle or playfulness or weirdness or whatever, And I just thought Next Generation was it was kind of it was a gateway for me into the Trek world, but also into this kind of idea that entertainment and TV could kind of do two things at once, I guess, and I was a kid watching a show that was for adults, but accessible to kids, I guess, at the same time.
Yeah. I think the ideas and the concepts of TOS were accessible to anybody who was willing to sit down and watch it. I think you just had to kind of wrap your mind around some of the ideas that were going to be presented in it. And that's one of the things that, even though I didn't like TOS to begin with, one of the things I did appreciate about it is that there were many times where I would stop watching an episode and it would force me to think. It would force me to think about, well, if that was reality today, what would be my reaction to that scenario, and things along those lines. So that's one of the things I do like about the difference between Star Wars and Star Trek, is that Star Trek is more hopeful, it's more methodical in its actions, and with the speculative fiction, and Star Wars has got the pew pews and the laser swords and things go boom more. So there is that. But
well,
I can agree with that.
Yeah, and I guess because it's films, it's broader themes, whereas the episodes of Star Trek can have these self-contained ideas. Like, more ground is covered, I guess, in all of the episodes of Star Trek, even if they might be of varying degrees of quality. There's a lot of ideas covered, and then the movies, the Star Wars movies, great spectacle, but it's a bit more black and white, good versus evil, right?
Oh, agreed. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And
Agreed.
it is funny though how much more story you can tell in a half-hour TV show than you can in a 2-hour movie sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
especially over the course of a season, you got the continuation of character
Right. Yeah,
development
I mean
and
you can have
roles and
character
things.
arcs, but even like one-shot episodes, sometimes there's more plot to a half-hour, 45-minute TV show than there is a 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
This is Skywalker. Anyway,
I wasn't gonna say it. Just gonna strongly imply it.
let me ask you a quick follow-up to that. So we know what your entry point is now with TNG and all that. So what does it mean personally to you for you to have a namespace inside of the Star Trek universe?
It's so weird. It's still so weird to me. Surreal. Like even as we were talking about it, and I was thinking about Next Generation, the shows I watched, I was remembering playing Next Generation with my friends in the backyard.
Mm-hmm.
I actually wasn't connecting that to my life now, where I have a role in this world. It's bizarre to me, it's surreal. It's just it's so it's so I'm so humbled and honored that I get to be a small part of this beautiful sci-fi world that so many people have embraced over the years. It is such a beloved property, such a beloved world. It's one of these very rare things where we were, before Strange New Worlds premiered, we all had a level of confidence, let's say, that the show was going to do well enough. That kind of confidence is unheard of with any other show that's premiering, because we were piggybacking on the success of decades worth of great Star Trek. So yes, I feel very yeah, still kind of giddy to be a part of it, and just kind of, I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever get a chance to play a part like this that comes with like a ready-made fan base. I'm glad that I'm playing a character who's connected to the world, but I'm not repeating. I'm not taking on a character who's already been played, other than
Right.
that beautiful shot of Shatner lying dead on the ground
With the mustache.
the mustache. I'm glad that I get to be kind of just originating the role in a certain way. There's less pressure on me than there is on Ethan or Celia so many people playing the legacy characters. I get to just have fun in a world that is so rich, and in a genre that is itself just inherently fun. Like we get to dress up, walk around a space station. I mean, a spaceship, not a station. We walk around a spaceship. We have future weapons. We meet aliens. That's just like my work. That's me going to work. It's wild. Yeah, it's wild.
I can only imagine. Sure.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
So out of all of your roles on IMDb, other than obviously Star Trek, the one that jumped out to me was your performance as Arno Dorian in Assassin's Creed Unity, who also then appears in Assassin's Creed Rogue as well. And you did more than just the voiceover for that role. If I understand correctly, you also did the motion capture for the character.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So outside of that character role, are you a gamer at all? And if so, do you have a favorite game or series?
I can't lie, I'm not a gamer. Yeah, I've never even played Assassin's Creed.
Really?
I have watched someone play the player character who I voiced. That was strange, but I had a period of gaming when I was younger. When I was young, I played computer games, and I was all about the Sierra RPGs like King's Quest and Space Quest, those games. All about that, and Civilization. That was, yeah, as a teenager, I was into that heavily, but I didn't ever have a console at home. And then I got a console in I think the first apartment I lived in, and a friend of mine he and we got into Grand Theft Auto when it was
Oh yeah.
Vice City, and I got obsessed with that game for a little while. I remember, to the point where I was dreaming about it, but not even just dreaming like I was living in the game. I was dreaming that I was sitting in front of the TV playing the game.
Wow.
Oh, interesting.
I woke up one day from one of those and I walked into the living room where my buddy was, and I was like, we're not playing this game anymore. Taking over my brain. And so I kind of like quit cold turkey, I think. So yeah, didn't really after that, didn't really pursue gaming, I guess. But it was so much fun to do the motion capture for Assassin's Creed. Like one of the coolest jobs I've ever had, for sure, because it's kind of a mix of theater in terms of the performance of it and the day work. It was kind of like a mix of theater and TV, because we were in this big warehouse, you know, with a million cameras set up all around. We're wearing our mocap suits. You know, we got the dots on our faces, and there's cameras set up and cameras, like handheld cameras, being moved around all around us, and we were just free to kind of like move through the space and invent what we're seeing, you know. And that was super fun. And you know, I didn't get to do the like badass parkour stuff. They got actual like stunt people to do that stuff, but you know, I did get to do in the cutscene stuff some kind of more physical sword play and stuff, and that was just so much fun to do. And I did that in Montreal, where I'm from. Ubisoft has a big office there, and so the people I was working with were almost all friends of mine or people that I'd worked with in the theater community over the years. Catherine Barabé, who played Elise in that. We had done theater together before, and now we're doing this funny motion capture, dots on our face, romantic scenes with cameras stuck to our heads. It was great fun, and I want to do more of that work, even though I don't play the games myself. I want to do more of that work.
Right. I mean, it sounds like fun. It just sounds like a fun day.
Totally. And there's a lot less like downtime and waiting than there is on a TV or film set, because there's no lighting that needs to get done. There's no real sets that need to get set up. It was a lot more active, and you're physical, obviously, you know. And well, yeah, I still remember like the pose I had to take, because you know, it would be like, I guess it was one of those games where the cutscenes meld into the action, you know? And come out of the act. Like we'd have to finish our cutscene, and I'd have to take this stance where one foot is slightly in front of the other, and I'm kind of like slightly not bouncing, but just like in this position, you know.
The player ready position.
The ready, yep.
There you go.
That's awesome.
I feel like they do that in most of the Assassin's games, though. Like there is that weird flow, and you kind of it takes you come out of the cutscene. Wait a second, this is no longer a cutscene.
Yeah, you come out of the cutscene, and then you're looking at the back of the player, you know, as they're ready for you to move, and they start bouncing around, so you know that they're controllable now. All right, so Dan, I was talking with a common friend, Jesse, one of our good friends over at Open Pike Night.
Oh yes.
And he had all nice, good things to say about you, of course. But all he would really say is that other than the fact, there you go. Other than to say that you were a great interview, the only other thing he would say was ask about the dog. So, Kathleen and I, we love animals on this show. Nick as well. And he's not here today. Not as much as us. But not as much. We'll claim we have more love for animals. I have two dogs. I have a pit bull named Mia and a corgi named Toast. And Kathleen also has another. She has a pit bull mix. Her name is Zoe. And so yeah, we love animals on our show. So the question is, Dan, I'm asking about the dog.
Tell us about the dog.
What's up with the dog? Yeah, well, I have a dog. He's not here in this room with me, but he's a poodle Shih Tzu mix, and we adopted him a couple years ago. He was 2 or 3 when we adopted him. And when we got him, his previous family had named him Charlie. And I knew as soon as we decided to adopt him, I was like, well, we can't let his name be Charlie. Charlie is my dad's name. I'm not going to have a dog who shares a name with my dad. But we thought, should it be a name that sounds like Charlie so that he recognizes it? And right away, I was just like, oh, Barley. That's a cute name for a dog. He's kind of the color of barley, of wheat, you know. And so we call him Barley. Our dog is Barley. And what I was talking to Jesse and the Open Pike crew about was how since we have adopted him, I swear to God, every second dog that I meet is named Charlie. It's without fail. I was honestly sure that one of you was going to have a dog named Charlie.
That's my brother's name.
Well, there you go. That's why you don't have a dog.
That's why I don't have a dog named Charlie.
Yeah. But it's crazy to me. Like somehow, I don't know if it's just like, you know, where I live in Ontario or something, but like everybody has named their dog Charlie. It's ridiculous. It started to feel a little bit like Truman Show or like a prank, a prank show where I'm a hidden camera thing. Like here's another Charlie. Like I've called it. I'll meet somebody and I'll be like, oh, what's your dog's name? And in my mind, I'm like, it's Charlie. And then they're like, Charlie. Yeah. Right. So now that I've told you about it, I bet you're going to be meeting Charlies all the time. It'll be.
Oh, I'm sure.
Probably.
But
it's like, you don't see that type of car until you buy that car and then you see it everywhere.
Exactly.
There are so many beige town and countries everywhere.
And they're all named Charlie.
I'm sure. That's what it feels like too. I'm running through my friends' dogs and pets, and I don't think any of my friends have
it's like
a pet named Charlie.
Maybe it's an Ontario thing. I don't know.
I have a friend who used to have a dog named Kevin. Kevin was a great name. He was a Chipu. He was a Chihuahua Poodle mix. He was an interesting little beast. And now they have, I don't even know what Hunter is. He's huge, but
it went the opposite sides of the spectrum.
Oh yeah, no. And his name, their current dog's name is Hunter George Bitehouse III. Oh
wow. Oh, because Hunter is Biden's dog's name?
No.
I think so.
I don't know why and I'm like, so he's the third.
Oh no, Hunter is Biden's son, not his dog. Right.
I don't know. I'm like, but if he's the third, what happened to the other two? And the answer that I got was that's why he's the third is because it's a provocative question that way. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Fair enough.
Alrighty then. Yeah, this dog is massive though. Like his back is like even with my hips. Like he's a big dog. He's adorable though. But since Tim beat me about asking about the dog, because rude. I'm usually the one who asks about the pets. I'm going to ask you something totally different because Tim upset me now.
So now for something completely different.
Yes. In my research, and as is evidenced by your background, you like books. It's a little bit obvious.
Oh, yeah.
So I was going to ask if you were a fan of physical books, but I'm guessing that's also a yes.
Totally, 100%. I don't like to read. I mean, no judgment, but I don't read on, whatever, Kindles or
on devices. Yeah. But what are your thoughts on audiobooks?
Audiobooks, I think, are wonderful. Personally, I don't really like listening to fiction in audiobooks. It just doesn't do it for me. It's maybe fiction is too subjective. Maybe that's what it is. And I feel like having someone tell me what the characters sound like doesn't work for me. But I do listen to nonfiction, an audiobook, because that is kind of, I don't know. It's like a way that I like to learn in a way, let's say. So yeah, I think audiobooks are wonderful, and I know some people kind of swear by them, listen to them constantly, and I think that's oh yeah.
I mean,
I was listening to this today while I was mowing the lawn. That's the Lord of the Rings as narrated by Andy Serkis. He does all the voices.
Oh, cool.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, like I am also, I love books. I much prefer physical media. I don't like reading on my tablet or on my phone, but I do have audiobooks as well. But that's typically the, if I'm driving and I'm alone, I'll listen to a book. Or if it's the, I really want to listen to this book, I really want to hear the story, but my kid keeps interrupting me. One headphone in, can still listen to my book, make sure she's not doing something that's going to get her hurt.
Yeah.
Like, so do you have a favorite series?
A favorite series? Oh man, that's tricky. I'm big into, earlier I was talking about that I read a lot when I was younger, and when I was a teenager, I read a ton of fantasy. That was my thing. That's kind of all I read as a teenager. And now I kind of read a little bit more all over the place. But like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is kind of always a perennial favorite. And I recently started reading Terry Pratchett's Discworld.
Oh yeah.
Which is so good. I read the first one years and years ago, and for whatever reason, I was like, I should read them in order, even though everyone says you don't have to read them in order. So eventually I found the second one at a used bookstore or something, and I just recently read it, and I love it, and I just went out and bought like 4 more of them so I can continue reading them.
Oh, nice.
It's so good. Like if I could choose to have written something, it would be the Discworld books.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I can see that.
Fantasy, but it's spoofing it, but it's not. It's like also solid fantasy on its own, and it's funny and it's smart and it's British. Those are all the things I want to be.
There you go.
So, yeah, Discworld, I'd say. Pretty great series. And
so with Hitchhiker's Guide, have you ever read Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul?
Yes.
Oh my word.
I read it
such a weird book.
Yeah, I read it a long time ago, but I did read it, and yes, it was weird. And and then there was a couple years ago, I don't know if you ever saw the show they made out of Dirk Gently. Yeah, I love that show. It was wacky, but I'm like, this is my thing. I'm into this.
All right, Dan. So we've reached the phase in the show where we now present you with a silly question, because as Kathleen likes to point out, the rest of our questions have been oh so serious. But you can answer this as serious or silly as you would like.
Okay.
Here we go. What is a food combination that people eat that you just can't get behind? For instance, I know people who like to take their French fries and dip them into their Wendy's Frosties.
Because it's delicious.
I can't. My daughter likes to put ketchup on macaroni and cheese. Also cannot.
Also delicious.
That's so interesting how there's some things that you just take for granted are like the normal way to eat things. Like you were like fries and Wendy's. I'm like, that's weird. And then you're like ketchup and macaroni and cheese. I'm like, isn't that the way that it is eaten? Like we just, I guess it depends on what we grow up with, right? But what do I find weird? I love sushi. I think that cream cheese in sushi, because that is one of the ways they make it, is gross. I don't like that.
That texture sounds wrong.
It's a filler piece that people put in there for cheaper places, especially if you go to a buffet. They chock it full of cream cheese. Yeah.
When I order sushi, I always say, if it's like a party platter or whatever, I'm like, no cream cheese. We have an allergy. We don't have an allergy. I just don't want any of it.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Texture just sounds wrong.
Yeah, it's weird.
I'm not a huge sushi fan, and I don't like.
There's a place I want to take my daughter to, over by my in-laws' house over by Lansing, Michigan, and it's like $35-40 a person, all you can eat sushi, and they make the sushi fresh in front of you per order. And I'm like,
see that?
I hope you guys are prepared to lose some money, because I'm going to eat you out of house and home. I will eat your body weight in sushi. Let's do this.
Yeah, so that's not a lot for an all you can eat. That sounds
no, especially for something that's fresh made. So I was like, yes, please.
Yes, please.
So, yeah,
I can't think of any food combos that I'm like, oh, that's gross.
Pepperoni and pineapple on pizza, also
delicious.
Yeah.
I've come around on that one. I've come around on it. I used to think it was gross.
Yeah. I don't like the combination of because I keep trying it because the rest of my family loves the Hawaiian style pizza, and I can't get past the sweet of the pineapple and the tomato sauce together. It just something about that combination, the way it hits my palate, I'm just like, no, thank you.
See, and I think I like sweet and sour meatballs, and I think that's part of the reason that I like Hawaiian pizza. Pizza is I like the sweet and the savory.
I'm
I like
just
sweet
now
and sour
getting
meatballs so much that I had them at my graduation party and at my wedding.
And I'm just now getting to a point in life where I like sweet and sour sauce. So
my wedding that also had macaroni and cheese and chicken nuggets. Like that was the entree.
That's good. You know how to make people happy.
It was solid comfort food. It was great.
But were they dino nuggets where you could play with them and move them across the plate?
No, I wanted dino nuggets, but those weren't the ones that they had available in the bulk quantities that we needed for the wedding.
Freaking jerks.
I know, right? And chocolate cake. I had chocolate cake at my wedding, which people also told me was not okay.
Jerks.
Hey,
it's not their wedding. It doesn't matter.
Right? My wedding. I can have chocolate cake if I want. It was delicious. Oh, goodness. All right. Now that we've talked about food and now I'm hungry again. Dan, thank you so much for being on our show with us today. Where can our viewers and our listeners go to find out more about you and your work?
Strange New Worlds premieres June 15th. That's tomorrow from the date of recording. June 15th on Paramount Plus and Crave if you're Canadian and want to watch it streaming. So that'll be a good thing to check out. I'm super excited about it. And otherwise, I guess they can find me on Twitter. I don't know. I pop in there sometimes. I think I'm just at Dan Jeannotte.
Yes.
But yes, thank you. But yeah, otherwise, just keep watching the show, keep loving the show, and we'll keep coming back. We are waiting to start filming the third season. We haven't started because writers are not getting paid fairly. So I say, anyone who's listening to this, support the writers' strike. Everyone who makes these beautiful things should be compensated fairly, but especially the people without whom there's no story at all, the writers. So
absolutely
support the writers' strike.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is definitely the most acceptable reason to not be filming season 3, but also the worst reason.
Yeah, exactly. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen, and it's going to be amazing. And I am just really stoked to see how season 2 looks, because I know it's got some amazing, amazing episodes in there.
I'm anxious to start watching it tomorrow. So
yeah, well, we will definitely link your Twitter. And guys, seriously, check out Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Do it.
Oh, yeah. It's so much fun.
It's so much fun.
I think it's worth noting to anyone who's, maybe on the fence about Star Trek, like Tim, you used to be. I don't think that Strange New Worlds requires a whole lot of buy-in or whatever you call it. Like, you don't need to know very much. Every episode is fairly self-contained. Just a fun adventure every week. And if you do know the history of the characters, then there's always a kind of nice through line for you. But it's a show you can totally just jump into to watch some fun sci-fi.
Absolutely agreed. I had very little Trek knowledge to begin with. I had some of the absolute basics down just because of being, alive and Trek being a thing. So, but yeah, the buy-in is very low, but the payoff is great. So yeah, absolutely get into Strange New Worlds. And if you want to find out more about Dan, you can always use Google. Google is free. So trust me, there's a ton of stuff out there. That's how we stalked him. I mean, we did our research for Dan for this episode.
Don't forget our pretty bow, Tim.
That's right. The pretty bow of research. So, all right, guys, I want to remind you that subscribing is the single most important thing that you can do to help our show to continue to grow, to help us get more amazing guests like Dan Jeannotte here, to have these fun conversations with and funny moments for you guys to be able to listen to. So please subscribe. It helps out well more than you'll ever know. And check out Dan's work as well, whether you go back, look at the stuff that he's done years past, or you sit down tomorrow morning, June 15th, and sit down and watch the awesomeness that will be Strange New Worlds Season 2. And so check that out as well. And also, you'll probably find some fun stuff from this episode on our Patreon channel, the behind the scenes and extra bonus content that may have gotten not part of this episode. So you'll have to wait and see. So go there.
Take my shirt off.
Maybe I kept mine on to not scare people with how white I am. So there's that. But
your camera could not handle that.
No, it couldn't. It would. Your cameras and your monitors at home would burst into flames. But if for whatever reason you are not happy with the content of our show today, please feel free to lodge a complaint with the head of our complaint department, Arno Dorian from Assassin's Creed. Yeah, just give him one copy of your complaint to Arno, because look, we hope that maybe he and his secret group of assassins will lose the note and about our atrocities from behind this microphone and let us go about our day. Chances are that's not going to happen. But if the complaint form makes their way to Arno and his friends, know that we will never see them coming, we will never hear them coming, and no one will ever hear from us again, because they're that effective. So be kind. Or just report Nick, because he's not here to defend himself today. Actually, I like that option. Let's go with that option. Go ahead and report Nick. Kathleen, you okay with that?
It was all Nick's fault.
All totally Nick's fault. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Back that up.
Yeah. Dan agrees. So yeah, let's go with that. Sorry, Nick. Nice knowing you.
This is what happens when you're not here, Nick. The bus runneth thine over.
Exactly. All right, guys. Thank you so much. That's going to do it for the FSF PopCast today. Goodbye.
Thanks for having me, you guys. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah.
On behalf of the rest of the hosts of the FSF PopCast, we want to thank you for listening to this episode. If you'd like to be a guest on a future episode, please contact us by means of Twitter or Instagram using the handle @FSF PopCast. Or go to www.fsfpopcast.com and click on the Contact Me link. Thanks again, and hope you enjoyed the episode.
Copyright 2023 FSF PopCast.
Reference to any specific product or entity mentioned on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by FSF PopCast. The views expressed by the guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact us via email at info@fsfpopcast.com. Original music by Jordan Michaels.